All right, we're going live with my friend Brian Strong from Tin Hats. We're going to be talking about something that nobody really likes to talk about, which is who's supposed to do what when it comes to sales and marketing. Brian was brave enough to join me today and talk about this. So, Brian, I'm so excited to get started today and ready to chat through what sales should be doing and what marketing should be doing. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me today, Laura. I mean, it's an exciting topic, and hopefully we don't go to
We
blows
don't need to
too.
fight.
Yeah, hopefully not too much, though.
I love it. Well, for those of you who are joining for the first time, this is a monthly training that I do here at the Business Growers. I'm Laura Johns, founder and CEO of the Business Growers. We are a marketing agency built for managed services providers, IT companies, and telecommunications providers. Like I said, Brian Strong is here. He's the CEO of Tin Hats. He took his MSP from 2 million to 19 million in 5 years, all organic. So that's going to be an interesting topic. And then I built the Business Growers, serving managed services providers after being the marketing leader at a managed services provider. So all I know really is managed services and IT telecom marketing. Brian is in the CEO seat, but he knows sales. And so we're going to be talking about the difference between the two, who does what. One thing that Brian and I agree on is there is definitely kind of a delineation of responsibility between what sales is supposed to be doing and what marketing is supposed to be doing. So a lot of times we don't just have that conversation, and I felt like conversation to have, and he was willing to have it with me. So I'm going to pull up a couple slides. We're not going to be too heavy on the slides today. We don't want to get crazy and too much about PowerPoint because we want everyone here to be able to ask questions. We want you to, feel free to share or drop things in the chat as you feel comfortable doing so. If you can see my screen, Brian, give me a thumbs up. I think, yep, good. All right. Awesome. All right. The great debate, MSP sales versus marketing and who owns what. Before we get started, I want to make sure if you are a managed services provider, IT business, telecommunications provider, I have a YouTube channel. Catherine on my team is going to drop it in the chat, or you can just go to YouTube and search for the Business Growers. Be sure you subscribe to this channel today. This actually is going to be live here in a couple days. This recording will be on the YouTube. So if you miss anything or you want to send this to somebody, you can do that by using the YouTube link. Of course, this is live streaming right now from my LinkedIn and the Business Growers LinkedIn. You can always refer back to it there. But if you do want more training resources, this is a great place to get those for sure. And then I always like to start with the ground rules. I think that a lot of times if we're taking an hour of our time to spend with other people, if we're sitting on a live training or a live webinar, let's just be here. Let's be here now. You've taken the time to make this investment. Brian and I have a lot of preparation that we've done to get ready for today to talk about really what the KPIs should be for sales and marketing, what you should be thinking about as a CEO or as a sales leader, how involved the founder should be in sales. So I just ask you today to put that participant hat on and phones on silent, shut down your team, shut out your distractions. If you've made the choice to be here now, then be here now, right? Also, the big question we're going to cover off on today. I get asked this a lot, and so does Brian probably. So who's supposed to generate leads? We're going to be covering off on this big question today. Who does what? Who's supposed to be the person responsible? And what we know that we agree on is a lot of times you get to a point in your MSP, IT or telecom business where marketing is saying, hey, I sent you this many qualified leads last month. And then sales is having real conversations, or maybe they're on the road and they're talking, but the pipeline says this is about to close. And sometimes these reports tell different stories. Brian, do you agree? Anything you want to say about that in terms of what we're reporting on? I know we're going to talk about KPIs in a minute, but do you feel like you've experienced this in your MSP in the past?
Absolutely, too. And it's a debate that I have with other MSPs as well, or I show a discussion.
Yeah, it's okay. We can debate.
Not a debate, really. It's what we'll talk about is what I've learned over the last 20 years. I mean, I was a sales guy to begin with,
Yeah.
outside sales. So I had to, I knew about like how to get leads and all those kind of different things and where that position was. And then also as a CEO and running a managed service business, so I've got strong opinions about it.
Yeah, yeah. And the expectations. And of course, I have a lot of conversations too with MSP leaders, and Everyone wants to know, what is our team supposed to be responsible for? What is the marketing team doing? And what exactly is the marketing engine running? Because I know as a marketing team member, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that sales really doesn't need to know about or want to know about. So we'll cover off on that today. I'm going to dig in a little bit into what exactly we're going to be covering today. We didn't mention this in the promotion of this, but one of the things that is really important when you're talking about sales for an MSP, depending on your size, is that founder trap or the CEO trap if you're not the founder, and where that CEO founder person sits in the sales process as you grow and develop. I'm sure it looks a lot different at 2 million than it does at 19 million. Brian can talk about that a little bit. And then the line of where marketing's job ends and sales begins, the shared definition of what a qualified lead is, what is the number that both teams own together and how to collaborate on those things, and then how to avoid finger pointing and make sure that your alignment every week with sales and marketing is not about who's pointing fingers at who, but is about collaboration and closing more deals. So before we do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about, Brian, you just humor me for a minute so that I can introduce you. You're an industry executive. Obviously, you've spent more than 20 years building outside sales engines and obviously have been successful. He's in East Tennessee, took the company from 2 million to 19 million at 10 hats. That's a 745% growth for those of you who don't know. And he really structured a sales model that he designed, he built, and he ran himself. And I think that all of us know that sales processes and sales trainings and sales tools and things that you can buy for sales or sign up for sales, they're a dime a dozen. And I think that Brian's approach is kind of unique. So I'd like, Brian, for you just to talk about your experience, how you got here, what got you to 10 hats, and kind of what was your path into creating kind of your own sales engine, as one might say.
Well, yeah, well, thanks. I started back in the MSP space back in 2005. And like I said before, I was in outside sales. And so I was out there beating the street, prospecting, doing those kind of different things. I also went through quite a bit of extensive training. My whole career has been in sales. My first job out of college was railroad materials. So I went from like a very industrial all the way up into kind of new age tech,
Yeah.
And so when I was at that first MSP in my outside sales career, I was at the company for about 6.5 years. It took me about a year, 18 months, which is a typical ramp period for an outside salesperson. There's a lot of people that don't give their outside sales reps enough time to actually mature and, give them the training that they need to make them successful. Well, in that last 5 years that I was there, I sold about $6 million in annual recurring revenue. So I was over $100,000 a month.
Is that you yourself or you had a team?
No, that was by myself. $100,000. I sold over $100,000 in monthly recurring, every year. I had one account near the end of my career. It was $137,000 by itself, monthly recurring revenue. So we did have a team, but
we all want those, the big deals, right?
Right. Yes. When you're ready for them, I can tell you that. But yeah, it was a methodology that I really put in place. I was, I'm Sandler trained. I've read a bunch of different books, a lot of psychology, and then adapted this sales process for the MSP space. Now, the one thing about the MSP space, it has a lot of nuances to it, and additionally, for a lot of businesses, this is like one of their biggest monthly recurring fees. So it's a high expense. Also, there's a lot of risk for a company as well. Their IT provider is the one that really takes care of one of their most critical systems. Today, you just think about it. If your systems are down, any of those systems are down, you can't work. So it's, they take it very serious on who they're picking to be their IT provider.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, it's one of those, part of my history is then in 2012, I left and wanted to start my own software as a service company or own my own business. And it had nothing to do with the MSP. I actually loved it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to compete with them as well because there's a lot of friends and there's still friends today.
Yeah.
That I'm in relationships I made through it. So I spent about 8 years working in that software as a service. We sold it in 2020. And then I had some friends that were at that first MSP that had joined another small MSP, did about $2 million a year,
Small at the time.
and they were, yeah, and they were, they were small. It was one of those where, or a typical MSP, frankly, below $3 million. And then, they asked me to help them with sales and marketing, and I was just kind of looking for something to do for a couple years and then decide what to do next. Once I joined, I mean, they were in tough shape, losing $300,000 a month, and doing about 2 million. We looked at cutting expenses and different things on a from a leadership standpoint, but you couldn't cut enough to.
Yeah, I was gonna say at that size too, it's really, it's not about cutting. You got to generate revenue. Like, you do. There is something, I always like to say, like, you can't really outsell a delivery problem, but at the same time, sales does cover a lot of issues at that size.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's like one of those from a even a standpoint. When I was a kid, I was in high school. One of my friend's parents, I always wanted to own my own business, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Yeah, he owned his own business, and he's like, and I asked him, I'm like, what should I do? If I want to own my own business. He goes, you need to get into sales, because if you can create revenue for your company, then you can kind of dig your way out of anything. But you have to learn how to sell. And so when I joined this next MSP, 10 Hats, we were just looking at, we had to sell our way out of it. So first thing I did, I mean, I had trained my software as a service, but I didn't, the industry had changed a little bit, where in that first MSP, we were mainly selling into places that had on-site IT or in-house IT. And then, when I came back, most people were, using MSPs. So we're going to have to displace MSPs. So that was a little bit different. So I was wondering, is my process going to work? But at the same time where we were, I had no other choice. So I just started teaching my team the sales process that I had. And, it took us, about 6 or 7 months before, people, really started adapting to it and learning it. We started getting our COIs and started prospecting and building our funnel. And then about 7 months into it, I kind of looked at one of the guys and I was like, buddy, we got to sell. I mean, we're going to sell 10 grand a month for the rest of the year. And he
Yeah.
looked at me and he goes, there's no way. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I've never seen that before. And I was like, and I told him, I was
Knew
like,
it could be done.
I knew it. I mean, that's the thing about it. It was like, I know we can do it because I did it by myself. So we can definitely do it together. I'm like, we'll scratch and claw and fight and scrape and all this kind of stuff. We're not losing anymore. And so from there on out, for that rest of the year, we missed it by 1 month. And that was in October. We had $8,200 for that month. But what I learned through that whole process is, like, my sales process from the standpoint of how to get in, how to lead through the sales process, how to keep prospects on, task, and keeping control of it, and making sure that we, built respect all the way through the process. And so, yeah, and then, the next year we doubled that. And the next year, I mean, it just kept steamrolling, and it's been a lot of fun. Kind of 5 years later, I kind of popped my head up and I'm like, wow, we've really done something pretty amazing. And I'm kind of sharing my story because I want to help other MSPs,
Yeah.
kind of see get this, achieve some of these different goals.
Well, and I think and what we'll cover off on today, one of the bigger challenges is just that there is kind of a real conversation that needs to be had about, like, whose responsibility is it? Like, what is sales supposed to be doing? What is marketing supposed to be doing? And you've got that founder component where the founder's still kind of sitting in the middle of, maybe they love to get in the middle of the marketing stuff, or they like to close the deals. And so you've really got to understand at whatever level. And I don't know if you have an opinion on kind of what point of revenue, at what point do you get to that revenue mark where it's like, okay, you have to create kind of a clear responsibility chart of who does what. But what I believe, and you can talk about what sales, but what I think we agree on together is, on the marketing side, I'm responsible for making sure that people know you exist. I'm responsible for making sure, like, the last thing a marketing leader wants to hear is, oh, I don't even know who you are. I don't even know what you do. Or, even on top of that, which we hear a lot of times, they've we have 10 customers, and in the last year, they've all gone with somebody else for a product that we offer. That's the worst thing. You don't want people going to other people, other clients, other competitors, excuse me, in any way, shape, or form, and taking your business. That's the worst thing. And so we want to make sure that that we avoid that. But on the marketing side, visibility, education, and then making sure they understand what you do so that you don't lose those opportunities, and then making sure that you are the air cover for those reps that are already prospecting. And when I say already prospecting, I know you have a strong opinion about that.
Yes.
Brian. So talk about that a little bit, and what you believe that sales owns, and what you think the founder owns too. I think that's important.
Yes. So, let's put this in a little bit of a context too. If you're starting an outside sales force, and even some founder-led, what I believe is that the salesperson should be responsible for their own prospecting and getting their own leads. So I understand that when founders when founders are the one selling, they try to hire ISRs and they try to do marketing leads, and from a standpoint of prospecting to grow the business to get a certain level, and that does work for a little while, but to actually to truly scale, and to scale to past that $10 million mark, which is kind of one of my BHAGs, is to help more MSPs get past that $10 million mark, is that the outside sales rep should own their own prospecting. And there's a couple different reasons why. One, if they're working on just marketing leads, it's one of those, they have a finger to point. And also, if they're working with inside sales, they have a finger to point to say, hey, I'm not getting the right prospects that to generate the revenue. So it can make people lazy. And so then also too, to put it in perspective from a marketing standpoint as well, from you can't control who actually responds on the website and fills out the form or whatever that is. You can do all the different things in the world, and you can try to hone it in and all this stuff. We did the same thing in the software as a service space. I do this currently, and I'll have MSP owners reach out, and I don't want to talk to them, but also have salespeople reach out. And I clearly say on this is for sales leaders, right? The point is, no matter what you do, you can't blame marketing for people filling out the form that shouldn't fill out the form.
Right.
Right. It's
right.
It's a you're just wasting your time.
Right.
So, but when somebody does, fill out the form for the marketing, treat those as what I consider them as like gravy. I mean, it's like one of those that this is one of the places where we get an additional one, but this is not our primary. Our primary is our outside sales reps are looking for their own deals. Mm-hmm. There's an additional reason why too. Is like whoever fills out the form, you don't know what size, until they fill out the form, you don't know what size company they are, kind of what they do.
Right.
You have your outside sales reps out there prospecting. They can target accounts that are better for the business, because if you have a growing MSP, you got to raise your average revenue.
Right.
When you raise your average revenue, you have to target larger and larger accounts as you go. Now, it doesn't mean that you do one below that just kind of runs across, but you got to, you have to take effort towards raising your average revenue. I say this all the time, and I ask, MSP owners and other people in the industry, around, they all agree with me. So to have a $10 million MSP, there's a couple ways you could do it. Would you rather have 80 customers that are paying you $10,000 a month, or 400 customers paying you $2,000 a month? Mm-hmm. Those are completely different businesses.
And from what I've understood too, a lot of times the smaller the customer, the more painful. Like a lot of times the bigger ones they are operationally structured. They understand a little bit more about the way you do business too. So I think it's a different customer sometimes, right?
Correct. I mean, so the smaller the company is, I mean, they're less departmentalized. They're people are wearing multiple hats, and so it feels a lot more critical. And then there's also just this whole realm of each account takes a certain amount of account management. Right. And so the larger the account, it takes the same amount of time to manage that one as it does a small one. The billing, the customer service, there's tickets, hopefully they don't have the same volume, but the volume scales, as it goes. But yes, and as you go up market, some of those smaller some of those smaller accounts, you kind of outgrow them, unfortunately. But that's one of the things too, that there's always another MSP down the road that's trying to grow their business as well. That may be a better fit, because it's like, like I kind of mentioned, if you have 80 customers averaging $10,000 a month, that's 80 relationships versus
Right.
400
Right.
relationships.
Right. What would you rather do, right?
Right. Well, it's just the cost, the burden cost of doing that.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess as an MSP, sales leader, or founder, CEO, whatever your role is, just understanding what you want
Yes,
and how you want to back into your number is really important.
that's right.
And then aligning, what I'm hearing is alignment with the marketing team on, I appreciate that that you have the opinion that marketing kind of, for the most part is gravy, but at the same time, there's a whole lot of work that marketing is doing. They need the data back from the sales
Absolutely.
team on what they're sending, what they're doing. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I think that is, a big kind of debate in, where I come in. A lot of times people just want leads. Well, we want quality leads. We want leads that we align on what is qualified. Let's talk about that for a minute before we get to this. I'm going to take this slide down because I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. What is qualified? What is qualified from your standpoint, and different things for different people from a size standpoint? Talk about that a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, what is a qualified lead? I mean, it's like one of those where, the prospect has some kind of, pain indicator that they need some service. They're a certain size, and that can be different for different size MSPs.
Right.
Some of them, some MSPs are targeting 10 users, or, 10 users and above. Some are 20 and above. 10 hats, we're at 20 and above. We also are in a third tier market. So we only
Yeah.
have 1 million people in our MSA.
Yeah.
And then two is like, are you meeting with a decision maker? And two, for me, one of the big qualifiers is, can we meet in person? Especially if they're, geographically close to us within a couple hours. If you're not willing to drive to the meeting, how qualified really is it?
Right.
And then from a marketing standpoint too, yeah, I mean, we spend quite a bit of money on marketing, but it's basically to validate everything that we're saying in the market, so that
Right.
people can see that we're an industry leader, and we're posting regularly to, educate our clients and the community. And so it really validates everything that we're doing from a sales standpoint or a business standpoint. Ourselves, I mean, if you haven't touched our website in 5 years and somebody's going to it and you say that you're a top tier MSP, you know what I mean? It says volumes.
Yeah, yeah. And from my standpoint, from a qualification, and I do think that we look at it a little bit in different ways, but I do know that there are a lot of times where the assumption of being ready to buy is a lot of times where I think the sales and marketing cross hairs a little bit. That's what I want to talk about a little bit, because I always like to prepare people that I'm talking to that this sometimes is a 2-year decision. They could already be in contract. They may not even know you exist yet. They may not even know they have a problem. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to B2B sales, long sales cycles, all the things. And so the challenge is making sure that sales and marketing are aligned on the qualification of someone who can make a purchase decision, and second is aligned with what your ideal customer profile is from a revenue standpoint, from a decision maker, all the boxes that sales believes they want checked. One of the key things that I believe that sales and marketing may never agree on is, does this person have to be ready to make a purchase decision right now? I believe that it is not always reasonable. Now, our job is to move them down the funnel and make sure that if they don't know about you, they get to know about you, and that's what marketing's doing. But sales doesn't really care about the marketing funnel. They really only care about the sales funnel. So we want to be serving in the sales funnel, but also understanding that, hey, Brian, if I'm your marketing team and I send you somebody who is the right person at the right company, then I trust that you're going to be able to keep that conversation going until they're ready to make a decision. What do you think about that?
I would agree. So part of it, yeah, and part of it's funny when you say that they're ready to buy. What I call is the prospect sales security system is basically, if you think like cybersecurity, we don't trust people to come into our networks
Right.
until they proven themselves trustworthy. So the same thing with the sales process. Just because somebody raises their hand and wants to have a conversation with you doesn't mean that they're going to trust you and give you all the information.
Right.
You are a salesperson. You're
Right.
trying to sell them something. People don't like to be sold.
Right. Right.
So it is one of those where even if they are ready to buy, if you don't have a good sales process to build respect, and that's where
Right.
kind of that slide we're talking about, like trust and respect.
Right.
You can build respect, and you can uncover not just the pain. Pain is just a symptom that there is something going on.
Right.
If you can get to the impact on how is it actually impacting the business, or more specifically, how is it impacting the person that you're speaking to?
Right.
Is relative to like either time or money.
Right.
So that is sales' job to find that out. Marketing is just getting someone to, potentially raise their hand.
Right.
And
Right.
if they're raising their hand to you, they're probably calling two other people.
Right.
So your salesperson process has to be really tight because you're competing with somebody else. And maybe they're just going to get a price from you because they like somebody else.
Right. Right.
And so it's one of those, like, if you don't have a great sales process to get them down that funnel and to really find out if they're ready to buy, that's not marketing's fault. That's sales.
Right. But what marketing's responsibility is in that regard is, hey, marketing is responsible for making sure that when they land on your website and they are considering two other companies,
Correct.
that they understand what the differentiator is between you and the other two. I think that actually is probably when I do an audit for people who are coming to me to kind of learn more about what we do. A lot of times the thing that we do, I think the most frequent offender of an MSP company is that they have a differentiator that they think is a true differentiator, but really it sounds just like everyone else's.
Yes.
And so if your prospect that you've done so much work to get in the funnel, you've got sales that is working so hard to keep that conversation going. Sales needs resources. Sales needs to make sure that if they land on your website, they're not going somewhere else.
That's right.
Because we want to make sure that whatever Brian is saying, or whenever somebody in sales is saying something, that we back it up and they have all the information they need to support their decision.
That's right.
And so, I think that one thing that we go a little backwards on is a lot of times marketing thinks, oh, when sales has it, our job is over. And sales thinks, oh, well, until I get the burning hot lead sent to me, my job is over. And so, or my job hasn't started. And the reality is we've got to have an understanding that, number one, we're on the same team, but number two, if we're communicating and I know that somebody is, on the sales side, I can see the pipeline, I see what's happening, then I'll make sure that the sales team has all the information they need. I make sure that before that contact ever reaches out to sales, that I've got all the resources they might need to help make their decision on the website or on the blog or, that type of thing. So that's where we do work together, I think, really well.
Agree. Because once they, if they rate, if it's a marketing link, a true marketing lead, they're coming to the website, they fill out the form, sales sets up the sales up the appointment. And then when they have the appointment, your FTA, and then they leave, they may go back to the website and validate everything that was said. And so marketing and sales do tie hand in hand. And then also too, is there other marketing too that validates what it is. It's a reminder that, they're working with your company. They see a Facebook post or Facebook or LinkedIn post or something like that.
That doesn't look like everyone else's because especially now, I will do a whole, another training on that, but especially now in the next 6 months to a year, everything's going to start sounding the same. I hope that you have a plan to make sure that you sound different. That's huge.
That's right. Yeah. And can you prove it? And, marketing has a part of that, but if the sales process doesn't validate that too, it's one can help the other.
Right.
But if you can't back it up on either side, then they hurt each other.
Right. So good.
So they have to be.
I want to talk to you a little bit about trying to be liked, because what salesperson doesn't want to be liked? And we talked a lot about this, the difference between like and respect when it comes to MSP sales. So talk about being liked versus being respected. I think this was such a good point, and I think it's a really, really interesting concept for an MSP founder, owner, salesperson to think about when it comes to liked versus respect. So give me your take on this.
So, yeah. So, if you ask most people, from the standpoint of from a sales standpoint, what they're trying to do is like, if I get liked, if the customer likes me enough, they're going to trust me and then I'll get respect. And so what this is a fallacy, especially in the MSP space, especially when you're doing outside, if you have outside salespeople. The reason is that, it's their infrastructure is very critical to the business. So one of those things is people have this misnomer is like, hey, we like each other. I'm meeting with a prospect. We like each other. We talked about the local college, ball team, and, we're both big fans and we go to all the games. That translates that they're going to trust you with their IT. So the way I actually look at it is, no, it's all about respect, and so if you think about it too, if you build respect and they understand the business and how IT affects the business and, what the core of the business does, and they understand that, hey, this person understands how my business operates. I
Yeah.
respect that,
Yeah.
right? I am willing to give them trust with something when I respect someone.
Right.
And so it's one of those too. If you think about it too, from like an owner-led sales versus an outside salesperson, the owner has some instant respect because they own the business,
Right.
right? When you go to outside sales,
This is
that
good.
that respect is lost, right? Because they're outside sales. So the sales process has to teach the sales rep how to gain respect. And
Right.
that's a questioning technique of understanding the business, getting to know the business. And it's not asking just about support, right? It's really understanding how the client makes money and what's impactful to them making money. And
Right.
so they, a lot of the prospects of sitting across from an owner, they get that. They feel like that person already understands that because they're operating a business.
Right.
And so, does like work? Yes, it works, but it takes a long time for somebody to translate, hey, they're a great conversation over lunch. I'm going to trust them with the most critical part of my business.
And
Versus
so,
if
go
I
ahead.
build
Sorry.
respect, I don't have to be liked. I just have to exude that I have competence in being able to serve them. It's like, orthopedic surgeon, he can come in, and if I have some, a broken leg or a hurt back or whatever it is, I'm like, I want the best guy. I'm not, I'm considering his attitude a little bit, but I want the best guy operating me. I don't care about his attitude as much as his ability to perform, right? And so, but through that respect, they ultimately end up liking you, but that shortens the sales cycle because if I respect the person, it builds trust, and they can fulfill this critical need for the business.
Yeah, I love it. And how if you're sitting in like a sales leadership seat right now, and you know that your close ratio is different than your CEO's was or founders was, like, how do you start this path to earn respect? I do think that, personally, I feel very strongly that storytelling is a big part of that, and like making sure that you do understand their business.
That's right.
Prepared, like you said, but what are some things today that if somebody's hearing this and they're like, oh wait, yeah, that's me, I need to really change the way I look at it? What are some suggestions that you have?
Yes. So when they're building respect from the FTA, one of the things is getting the prospect to speak more, asking questions, and diving deeper into those questions. If they haven't, understand like what the business does, how does it function, how does it make money, and then you can translate it over into IT. It's like, what is your service like? But if they just say that they have, our service is slow, or it's not, it's not adequate for what our needs are, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how is that impacting the business? So I give this example sometimes. It's like, you'll have a ticket where, somebody can't print.
Yeah.
And what do they do? They call in the help desk, and then you reboot the printer, the spooler, right? And they do that once a week, right? And then what's the root cause of that is that the drivers need to be updated, but they haven't.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will say, well, that's the impact, right? Well, no, it's because the owner is going to a bid opening and he's printing off all of it in a meet with a client, and he's printing off all his material to go meet with a client, and the printer doesn't work. And he's finally prints it, and it's 20 minutes late to this meeting, and he loses the deal.
Mm-hmm.
because he lost, I mean, he lost all respect with that client. That's the impact, the lost revenue because the printer didn't print. So there's a big difference between the pain, I can't print, the root cause of the driver needs to be updated, and the impact, the loss of revenue. So a lot of people don't dig deep enough to find out what the true impact is, and that would cause somebody to switch MSPs almost immediately. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. That's so good. So honestly, you can't, this is probably not a sales position or an industry in which you can just kind of blow through it or not not really educate yourself in understanding your customer's problem. That's what I'm kind of hearing. So I think that if you're on a sales team or a sales leader, I would say a great way to kind of practice this is to have conversations with your current customers
Yes.
and learn what their problems, their biggest pain points are. Because a lot of times it's not even, we want to get into the server or the router or all the level of detail. They just want their stuff to work. And
That's
so,
right.
but you've got to be able to understand how to diagnose the real pain, right? And so
That's right.
that's a huge part of it. I
And
love
you'll,
that.
there's a
But
funny curve too. Just if you humor me for a few
yeah.
minutes. So if you hire a new sales rep, right? In the MSP space, they need extensive training.
Hmm.
But if you hire a new sales rep and you get them into a meeting, the one thing that they will do, since they know nothing, they will ask a ton of questions.
Yeah.
Well, how's that impact the business? What does that do? I don't understand. And so they're very curious to find out all this information, and
Yeah.
they bring it back, and then it's like one of those where they can talk to the team and all this other stuff, and they come up with, they go back to the client and go, hey, is this all of what you were talking about?
Yeah.
And so, because they don't know anything, they ask a lot of questions. So then what happens is the sales rep learns the technical side. So then all of a sudden, they get into a meeting and the client goes, well, I have so and so. Well, I know what the problem is here. And so then they spill their guts on talk, 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 solution, solution, solution. And then they don't, and their sales dip because they stopped asking questions. They stopped getting the prospect engaged. So a
Yeah.
sales professional is one that has the technical knowledge, but
Mhm.
also asks the questions. But when they ask the questions, they understand where they're going from a technical standpoint, so they can ask deeper, better questions to navigate the story. So
Mhm.
that's where your sales process has to be. One of the things that I teach too is how do you add the technical, but also keep the questioning so that you're driving the process forward and you keep control of the whole sales process.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to do that by having information. Okay, now we're going to kind of turn since we're about 20 minutes left, and we're going to talk about KPIs and scorecards because I do think that's a really important part of understanding what are the marketing KPIs, what are the sales KPIs. For me, there are marketing KPIs that we're keeping up with outside of the sales meetings, and there are marketing KPIs that we're keeping up with inside of the sales meetings. Don't be, if you're a marketing leader in this space, don't go show the sales team how many people clicked a link. And I know that we are working so hard to get these clicks and to get these conversions, but showing them, how the sausage is made before it even gets to the form fill and giving them all the problems that you're having because of X, Y, and Z, like they do not care. So all they want to know is how you're contributing to their pipeline, right? So don't bring your clicks into the sales meeting. They don't care about your marketing data. That's important. And we want to know what type of content's converting and all of that. But really all they want to know is what's being put in my pipeline by marketing. And like Brian said, we want to look at this as kind of gravy, icing on the cake. I also believe that if you have an engine and you're not trying to spin up little 6-month I call it spitball marketing because a lot of times, especially in a young MSP, we like to, for example, we'll spin up a email campaign for 6 weeks, and then we'll spin up a Facebook post campaign for 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden we've done a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and we're wondering why marketing's not working. The issue is that we're not building a system. If you are building a system, then what you're able to deliver to your sales teams is, hey, here's how much it's costing to get a marketing lead booked. Because sales data you can't always determine that, but marketing data you can. Here's what I'm contributing to the pipeline from marketing sources, whether it's an event that we sponsored, whether it's a a trade show, whether it's an ad that we ran. Here's exactly what I've been able to contribute, and then what's closing. So your pipeline for sales marketing, your KPIs are how much is it costing me to give you a lead so that we're making sure we're not spending too much because we want to make sure we're getting good ROI. What's my pipeline contribution from marketing sources, and then what's closing from marketing sources, and that allows us to really stay aligned with the sales team in terms of what's actually going on, on their scoreboard. So talk a little bit about sales. What do you think, Brian? What's yours?
So the biggest one, always the biggest one, second is far, far, far behind, is FTA scheduled. This is like your outside sales rep. That's the one big metrics that you have to consistently track. It's because what the FTA that you have today or this week is what you will be selling 3 months from now. So if you don't, if that starts to slag, then you know that your pipeline is going to be thin moving forward. So it's like if there's only one, this is the one.
Right.
And then two, it's like, I think it's one of those, if you're a growing MSP and you're wanting to continue to grow, and this is more for the owner, not for the salesperson, is looking at your average size deal. Is it continuing to rise? Like we talked about before, do you want a MSP that has 80 $10,000 accounts or 400 $2,000 accounts? Mm-hmm. This will show the health of your organization, and you continue to watch that. Now your close rate too. It's like from FTA to close. What that means is that tells you what the sales process is like. In the MSP space, most people are trying to aim for about 25%. I'm looking for our close ratio has been 70-80%.
Yeah.
That's because of a better sales process. But, that's one of those, if you want to continue to look at that close ratio will tell you if they're getting stalled inside the sales process. What are they doing? They're losing control. They're letting the prospect keep control of the process instead of them.
Yeah.
And then pipeline velocity is like how fast are they going through? Are they starting to linger? That means they're not getting enough information to find out if the customer has impact.
Yeah.
And are they talking to the right people?
Yeah. That's good. I think we overcomplicate sometimes what the scoreboard should be. And so I think that having a really good dashboard that bubbles these things up really gives you all the information you need. Same for the marketing one. Just make sure that you're not trying to share your full marketing dashboard with the sales team, and make sure what matters to them. And then right here, what matters on the sales scoreboard, those are the things that you should be looking at together every week. So speaking of looking at together, a weekly meeting that avoids finger pointing. We can love each other, we can hate each other, but we're all here for the same reason, right? So let's make sure that we understand these two key things. This is my soapbox is marketing exists to support sales. Sales should inform marketing. It's like a cyclical thing. You can only be as good as the information we have. And so while an ideal customer looks ideal to us based on what we've decided is qualified, if it's not, or we're not closing these deals, or we get all the way to a certain stage and we see, consistency in kind of the sales funnel drop off, marketing has to understand that, and we need to know that it's a shared accountability to make sure deals are flowing through the pipeline. Brian and I kind of, we don't want to overcomplicate it. We kind of got together on what would the agenda look like, because I think you need to have a marketing meeting, and I think you need to have a marketing and sales alignment meeting on a weekly basis, at least just for 30 minutes every week, or more if you want. But this is kind of what we talked about is let's not overcomplicate it. Let's look at the new opportunities from everyone, right? Because we're all accountable. Let's talk about lead quality. And this is where marketing can get the information they need from sales. Hey, these two new opportunities came in through XYZ resource, and let's talk about it. And I think that's actually probably one of the things we're not doing, is that it's time consuming and kind of painful to sit there and talk about opportunities. And of course, depending on what size you are, it's gonna, it could fill up the whole meeting if you have 30 opportunities, but let's just talk about a couple of them. Let's pull a couple from the pipeline and talk about what's moving, because what you should start to see is identified sources of like, hey, these 4 sources, these 2 sources, this one source is a huge, cash cow for us, and we're seeing stuff move faster when it comes from this source. And that's how marketing gets better at what they're doing, is let's not waste time on something that's not giving us any new opportunities. Let's look at the lead quality and have these conversations, right?
I agreed. And there's trends in, what's going on in the marketplace or what people are wanting to talk about, especially some of the first kind of indicators in a meeting is that whether it's AI or automation or a kind of different, these things that are going on, and so that's where, sales and marketing should work in tandem. Like, hey, I'm hearing people ask more about XYZ, and that's coming from sales. It's like when I talk to people, they're asking me these kind of questions, and I'm starting to see some commonality in that. That's great for marketing. Then they can start putting pieces out there and start communicating that out. And because we know people are interested in that topic, right? And so that's where marketing really can support.
Yeah.
Now, if you want marketing to bring in leads that are relative to what's going on in the marketplace, sales has got to communicate that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and so that's where I think, having this kind of a meeting to keep this coordinated to make sure that each is supporting the other. I mean, that it just makes it, and that's where I think, too often people look at marketing.
Yeah, we like to silo. We like to get siloed.
And then sales is way over here, and they're really tied at the hip.
Yeah, I know. We need to, I think if you realize that the reason that you're not having, conversations or meetings with sales is because you hate each other, or you dread the meeting, or, whatever, that's a foundational issue. You need to be able to have a meeting every week outside of your sales meeting, outside of your marketing meeting, where you're talking about what are we doing together, review the pipeline, the lead quality, and then this third step is important. What are we doing with this information? What are the action items for sales? What are the action items for marketing? Hey, Brian, you had these two opportunities that you think are hot. What were their pain points? Can you tell me what those are? I can continue the resources, because we all know that sales, a lot of times, they're, depending on their sales style, they're either out and about or they might not have time. And marketing probably knows, hey, these 3 resources hit that pain point specifically. Here, you can send them to them. So those things are really, when you really start seeing how marketing and sales can work together is understanding not only your pipeline, your lead quality, but then what's the response and how do we turn it into action? And then at the end of the meeting, it's what do we get done before next week from this meeting? And you will start seeing a huge change in how things are moving if you're able to do that, I think.
Agreed. And, referrals are what, MSPs really thrive off at the beginning with.
Right, sure.
Right. But they also continue throughout.
Right.
They may not have the volume as they did when you first started, but
Right.
there's still it's still a way to get different leads. How do you do that too? I think marketing plays a big important part of that. It's from the standpoint of communicating with current clients in the posts that are put out and the information that is put out from the marketing department to continue to educate your current clients, because then it's like one of those, they may talk to somebody that they know that
Right.
will give you a reference, and that might
Right.
the referral might be spurred from marketing, not just
Right. Right.
so it's one of those that I think in which your current clients are going through, or also which your prospects are going through as well. So it's a good place to go.
Well, and we a lot of times I think miss an opportunity to communicate with our current clients. And I always like to say, because everyone wants, 1 email or 3 emails to just like blow your sales leads out of the water. Just as important as the email content and what you say in the email is the fact that your name is in someone's inbox on a regular basis. And if you're not nurturing your current customers the same way that you're nurturing new opportunities, then that's when they go buy something from someone else because they didn't hear from you or they didn't see you. So marketing is a great tool to use. And also kind of going back to those referrals. Referrals are a great lead source, but what can we do to make sure that we are tagging referral sources appropriately for the sales team? So making sure that your CRM is set up to not just mark something as a referral, but a referral from who? Because if we look at the source data and we see that, hey, this client is sending us 7 referrals a year, like what? Let's do something for them. Or this partner is sending us a lot more referrals than others. Let's make sure we put gas on the things that make the most sense to make a bigger investment in.
Good, yeah.
So the MSP sales engine, I love talking about this because I do think you can whatever sales process works for you, great, but you can certainly slice it a lot of different ways. And I think that this is a really smart process that people can use. If you don't have a sales process today, you're interested in creating or adopting a sales process. Brian, can you kind of talk through this a little bit, your 6 steps that you use that kind of, I think, were the secret sauce to your growth at 10 Hats?
Yeah, I mean, so this is, the sales process that we use. One of it, as you go into each meeting, people always wonder what it's going to be about, right? And from the standpoint, and if there's no agenda, then, people have a tendency to go to the darkest place that they're going to be told.
Right.
So setting up an agenda and telling the prospect of, hey, what this meeting is going to be about. Right. And understanding that, you're going to ask a lot of questions. And then, two, it's, what do they hope to get out of this meeting as well? And that's a good opening line to start a good conversation. Yeah. And then we get into impact. This is one of my areas is, a lot of people call it, in the industry, they use the word pain. And what we talked about before, pain is just a symptom of something that's going on. Just because, you've heard this many times, I've got a pain in my hamstring, deep down in your foot. So we need to really find out what's going on, where the impact is really happening. And that's where impact comes in. Is how is it costing the company money or time or a combination of both? And then we get into the economics. A lot of people talk about budget. Budget is a line item on a financial sheet. If you have, if you're looking at the impacts has time or money. Money, if there's money, that is something that can go into the economics of the deal. And it's just not the budget, right? So budget is one component of what somebody's willing to spend to solve their problems. And so that's what we kind of go into. And then there's also the decision and this is different. This is the politics of how they make decisions inside of a company. If you don't understand that, especially if you're going up mid-market, right, where we spend a lot of our time, a lot of times there's multiple decision makers. There's a process. And a lot of people too, when they're working with someone, it's their advocate. They can only tell you no, but they can't tell you yes.
Right.
So how do you get through this decision process to get to the person or the people, that can tell you yes to get that done? And that's, one of the things that we really explore. And then if you do all 3 of those steps really well, the close comes, it's not a presentation. You're not trying to talk them into anything. You've done all the homework before. The presentation, it's kind of like, I think about it, from the standpoint of when you buy a house, the whole process of the negotiation, the inspection, the movers, the insurance, the escrow, all these kind of different things are already in place. So when you get to the signing table and you get to the closing table, all you're doing is signing. So if you're having problems and you're trying to close people right at the end, that means you haven't done the other 3 steps really well. And then there's the resolution. The resolution is, after the climax of the movie, the hero, saves the girl, and then they do what happens next. And so that's basically that's good onboarding and a good handoff. And that's sales. That is not just, hey, we got them signed and we hand it off to the project management team, the onboarding team, and they go from there. No, there's quite a few things inside that step of, they still got to talk to their old MSP to get, and so there's a lot of different jeopardies that go along in that side. So that's one of the things we talk about as well and teach to help that transition and keep that customer even after they sign and make the onboarding experience pleasant.
Right. Love it. So if you don't have a sales process, you don't have preparation for meetings, this is a great one to follow. And I know Brian can talk to you more about the specifics of how he implemented this. And of course, we wouldn't have done all this work today with just 4 minutes left. We probably won't have time for a lot of questions, but Brian, I'm going to give you a link to his LinkedIn here in just a few minutes. Also, we created a scoreboard evaluation with a point system and everything. So if you want to take what you learned today and take it to your sales or marketing leader, if you're in sales and you want your marketing leader to look at it together, or you're a CEO that wants to share this with your sales and marketing teams, this scoreboard is kind of here's how we're going to rate ourselves from a sales standpoint, marketing standpoint, how we work together. That's kind of the whole point of today is not just what sales is doing, what's marketing doing, but how are we going to work together to make sure that we are getting the best result for the business. So you can for sure scan this QR code. Anytime I post to LinkedIn or YouTube, I'll make sure that I put the link in there as well for you to grab. Free resource for you. And then also Brian's LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with Brian, again, Brian loves sharing this. He's been very generous with sharing with me. We've had lots of just great conversations as a sales leader, MSP leader, marketing leader about some things in our industry that we really align on. So Brian's a great person to talk to. I know he's open to talking about sales process anytime. So you can connect with him right here on LinkedIn and shoot him a DM. And then if you are interested in learning more about the Business Growers, one thing that we do as a complimentary offer for anyone who sees a live training of ours is to give you a growth gap assessment. No strings attached. We're just going to tell you from a digital standpoint, because a lot of times we think we're healthy and then we don't know how digitally unhealthy we are. So from a digital marketing standpoint, I can give you a complimentary growth gap assessment. And of course, I'm very active on LinkedIn and always checking my DMs, so you can message me too. Brian, thank you for joining today. It was really fun. I feel like we could talk all day. There's always more to say when it comes to sales and marketing and how we can improve. So thank you for joining me today. Is there anything else you want to say as we sign off?
I'm passionate about this topic, as we both are. And so this has been a lot of fun, and hopefully, someone's got something out of this. And please reach out to either of us to continue the conversation.
That's right. Thank you so much, Brian. And if you have not yet, be sure to subscribe to the Business Growers. It's Get More MSP Leads is the name of my channel. It's how we communicate trainings, how I make sure I give you all the tips that you need to be successful as a managed services provider business, and be sure you subscribe. Thanks so much, Brian. Y'all have a great day.